that.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Delva. Great to have you here. Don't tell the EB's Landing, one of our sponsors for these Porch stores, that I put bunting over their plaque. This is a pleasure for me to be here today, more than usual even. It's on the eve of a really important holiday, the 4th of July. And the other thing about it is there's, I think, a lot we can learn from history about celebrating the 4th of July that could help us turn around, maybe recalibrate a little bit how we celebrate it, or at least be aware of what we're doing today by comparing it to what used to take place and just see if we can learn from that. So there might be a little political implications in what I talk about today, but I want you to know that everything I say that has political implications, it's based in history. Okay. Kellen will keep me honest. Okay. Thank you, Kellen. So, yes, the talk today is on celebrating the 4th of July around Puget Sound. But we're not going to cover all of Puget Sound, so I want to give you a feeling geographically of where we're going to go so that you can kind of follow along the best. We're going to start here, actually, in the present. And we're going to go from that, talking about today's celebrations and all, to the communities right around the island here, and also surrounding off-island communities, just several of them. And then we're going to make a big jump down to South Sound and pick up the date 1841, and we're going to be located in between Tacoma and Olympia for that. And once we do that, we're going to expand on that a little bit and go forward in time slightly to the 1850s and 1860s. Still really important years for celebrating the 4th of July. And then call it at that. That'll be the conclusion time-wise. So the time-wise, the present to let's say as far back as some of our grandparents, that is 1890s and the early 1900s, and then from there skip back to the 1841 date that I gave you, which is a really important one. So in the present day, quick now, if you were representatives of a town, let's call it Heritageburg, and we were going to do a 4th of July celebration in our fair city, just real quickly, what might you do besides a 4th of July parade? Anybody? Just name something real quick.
Fireworks. Fireworks.
What again?
Fireworks.
Fireworks. Okay.
Picnics.
Okay, one at a time. Okay, and Kellen?
I just said picnics. So
Okay,
several
okay,
people.
yeah.
Several of us said picnics.
Picnics?
Yeah.
Okay,
Baseball game.
Yeah.
good. Baseball games.
Band. Music.
Music.
We used to have
Anything else?
Horse races in Coopville.
Yeah.
Yeah, horse races on the 4th in Coopville.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're pretty much hitting it. Anything else?
Watermelon.
What again?
Watermelon.
Watermelon. So, sort of the portion of the picnic idea. Yeah. But watermelon's kind of an essential.
Lots of decorations. Banners and signs and flags. Lots of decorations.
There you go. Lots of decoration. Absolutely.
Really
Okay.
multiple flags.
And multiple
Flags.
flags. Okay.
A lot of flags.
A proclamation.
A proclamation. Yes.
Yes. mayors feel important.
Very good. Okay, we'll stop there. There's probably some other things, but I think you pretty well got it. Okay, so part of what I'm going to do is, in the talk, is to try to give some perspective on things. And by starting in the present day and seeing what we consider to be important and maybe essential for the 4th of July celebration, I think will help us when we start talking about some of what happened in history. So I'll lay this aside for just a moment. And, well, let me ask you further. If you had to pick from all of that, what do you think's the most important element of the celebration? Is there anything that really stands out? The watermelon. Okay, well, we'll stop there. All righty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gathering. Yeah, exactly what
Remembering why we're celebrating.
What's up?
Remembering why we're celebrating.
Thank you. That may come up later. Yeah, and that would be in the kind of the proclamations,
we didn't hear what he said.
speeches. Yeah, it's, why we're celebrating. Yeah, maybe I should go ahead and write that down. Because it kind of, let's see, declaration, proclamation, kind of gets into that area a little bit. I'll just call it the why.
I don't know if you heard, but the gentleman here said the gathering.
I get some kind of gathering.
Yeah, the being the community.
Yes, community. Good.
I like to elevate people.
Okay. Boy, I'm sure glad I can still touch my toes. Let's touch real briefly on something that really relates to our 250th celebration, and that's the 200th celebration in Washington State, the sesquicentennial. I can pronounce that one, but I can't pronounce what this 250th one is.
Bicentennial.
It's what?
Bicentennial.
Oh, bicentennial. Okay, yeah, bicentennial. That's right, 200th. Okay, I can pronounce that, but I can't the. Yeah. Thank you. We needed a volunteer for that one. Anyway, in that one, they had the usual kind of parades and festivities and stuff, the general kind of stuff for sure. But they did two interesting things here in Washington State that maybe is a little different. One was they had what they called a freedom train. So a train with undoubtedly documents and displays and maybe even speakers and so on, traveling around the state by train. Kind of catchy. The other thing they did was oral histories. Now these oral histories were not directly related to the Revolutionary War and independence. Instead, they were more like a time capsule to capture the memories of pioneers and people in the know in the communities before they go away. So it was very focused on the communities and very much in the here and now to just try to capture that. So those are the two kind of, I see as strong points of that celebration. Now here locally, going community by community on the island, they all did things, they all had a lot in common, but there were some uniquenesses too, and I'm going to try to capture what some of the uniquenesses were. And we'll start in Oak Harbor. Oak Harbor today is kind of our larger community, but that wasn't always the case. They were pretty small at one time too. So they did do a lot of celebration with fireworks and gatherings at Windjammer Park and places in Oak Tree Park. So I'm gonna pass around, and I try to remember to pass around all the things that pertain to the topic that I'm talking about at the time, so that you don't have too much. You can do it in clumps maybe. But the first thing I'm going to show you in this group, I need to show the folks back home what I'm doing. This is a postcard from around the turn of the century of an Oak Harbor celebration in Oak Tree Park. And this is a parade in downtown Oak Harbor. And they got buggies and they got internal combustion engines too in that parade. They got both. So you know it's after the turn of the century. Okay. This next one's going to throw you a little bit, but it's so intriguing I couldn't resist. This is the USS Bear. This is a Coast Guard revenue cutter that did all kinds of things roughly between the 1920s and the 1940s, including going to Oak Harbor. And the reason it's here that I'm showing you this is because somewhere I read a local person said that they were here for the 4th of July. Well, that's not overly likely, actually. But I wanted to show it to you also to emphasize that it was true that for a lot of the 4th of July celebrations around here, ships were involved. And ships with bunting, like what you see here, and I don't know, maybe fireworks off the deck, I'm not sure. But anyway, they played a big role in 4th of July celebrations. So we'll just play like the rumor's true, okay? Because the U.S. Bear is about the most storied ship in the Coast Guard. And it was even in the Navy, too. So, I mean, whoa. Okay, I'll give you the first batch. There you go. So that was a uniqueness of Oak Harbor. They were on the water. They put their fireworks on a barge off the shore and shot from there in the early days. And then Ron Van Dyke tells me that after the fireworks went off, they dove into the water and had a good swim. Small town stuff at that time. The next town that I'd like to share with you is, I might have, let's see, no, there's no Anacortes in there. Anacortes. Anacortes, like so many of the towns around here, had really humble beginnings and then boom times and stuff. And the boom time for Anacortes was about like what it was for Port Townsend. That is around 1889 and 1890. A lot of growth. So Anacortes is on the map for the 4th of July because a very large number of people came to Anacortes to celebrate. The population at that time in Anacortes was about 9,000, and they had about 7,000 people come for the 4th of July. I mean, the city was swamped. So that's Anacortes' claim to fame. And we have Port Townsend, and that was the case of the decorated ships quite a bit. Max Welton down at the south end of the island. How many people have been to the Max Welton 4th of July parade? Okay, I mean, this place where they have it, it's out in the sticks. You know, I mean, yeah, you just can't get much smaller. But oh no, we're gonna have an uprising. Bring the fire hose. Anyway, they have spirit galore there. It's an amazing parade if you can ever go. Camano Island. Small celebrations again, some of them driven by affiliation with the Grange and other organizations like that. They do have a number of heritage-type organizations there. And one of the standout things that they did this century was create what they called a Freedom Park. And it was introduced to the public on the 4th of July as totally built by the local citizens, and there's a fair amount of construction. And so anyway, that's Camino Island. And then Stanwood is kind of interesting. Stanwood was actually named after one of our pioneers, the Pearson family. So it was Clara Pearson. Let's see, Clara Stanwood Pearson was her name, and she married D.O. Pearson, who was the son of Daniel Pearson, who is the Pearson that you hear about here on the island, who was the first lighthouse keeper. Second. Good. I need all the help I can get. Second lighthouse keeper, and was just prominent in the community for, a number of different things. But boy, when the family moved to Stanwood, for the folks back home, they built quite a house there. And it's like a mansion. They a lot of times refer to it like that. And it's today their museum in Stanwood, this building right here. Now, pictured in this picture are some pretty, it's a pretty incredible composition of people. They're kind of standing separately from each other because basically they're watching a parade go by with flags flying. It's the 4th of July. And from Coupeville has come Charles Terry, the guy who built one of the two houses that my family has restored here. So Charlie Terry came over. Also, Clara Stanwood Pearson that I mentioned. And then after that, left to right, is Daniel Pearson seated. And then right next to him is Flora Ingle. Flora Pearson Ingle is in the picture. She needs no introduction here. And then there's one other person, maybe. Nope, that's pretty much it for the ones I'll describe. There's about 8 people there in all. Okay, so here's that one. And then finally, we're going to take a pause. Sound of Freedom on 4th of July celebration days. Anyway, Coupeville had the usual kind of stuff and built up to having parades and everything like the other small towns, and festivities, and baseball games was really big in Coupeville. But an interesting thing happened. I used AI, Copilot, a little bit to do my preparation for today. And one of the things I wanted to do is check on Coupeville and just see if there's anything that happened that I didn't particularly know about. And what turned up, the Copilot told me, was that, how did they put that? That the Wilkes celebration that I'm going to talk about quite a bit was one of the important Puget Sound area influences, which is true, and it's something that I would tell you, but how Copilot came up with that is interesting. Anyway, they did. So sure enough, we're gonna continue with that thought to talk about the Wilkes expedition. Okay. The Wilkes expedition was the first around-the-world sailing, exploring expedition for the United States. How many have heard of the Wilkes expedition? Well, that's kind of surprising because most of the people, when they think of these expeditions, they think of the Vancouver expedition. Vancouver left his name all over the place, and he was kind of the first to carefully chart the area and so on. And he definitely got around. He was looking for a special passage that people could use to get over to Europe a little bit better. And that was mostly his mission. So his charting had a lot to do with, well, where did these inlets go? You know, that kind of a thing. For the Wilkes expedition, he had very definite orders, and there were 3 things that he was supposed to check especially on. One, interestingly enough, was Antarctica, which is kind of a mystery place. Just like up here was a mystery place for so long in world exploration, one of the last to be really explored by Europeans and carefully charted. Antarctica was that way. So he spent a fair amount of time there in rough water and basically explored and charted as well as he could an area that was kind of as wide as Australia is wide. You know, the longest stretch on Australia is the width. And so if you draw lines down from there to Antarctica, it was basically that plus about 500 miles on each side. So that was the first thing he was supposed to do. The second thing, and this has to do with the United States being able to traverse the Pacific and get to the Orient and the East Indies and so on, was to carefully chart the islands in the Pacific, especially the Fijis and the Solomon Islands and like that. So they spent a lot of time doing that. And he lost his nephew there in the Fiji Islands. And this is just trivia kind of stuff, but it's kind of interesting. His nephew is named Henry, and Henry Island in the San Juans gets its name from his nephew who died in the Fiji Islands. Okay. You're the only kids on the block who are going to know that. That's it. Yeah, you're privileged. Anyway, okay. Charles Wilkes is decked out here in his finest. He's a very serious-looking man. He cuts a good figure in his uniform and as a Navy guy. And he was all business, let me tell you. So Callan here, she tends to kind of think of Charles Wilkes as being a little bit out of order. Am I wrong? No?
You are not wrong.
I'm not wrong. Okay. He's out of order. He had, in some ways, a mind of his own and a disposition that maintained, shall we say, a lot of order shipboard. Yeah, it was an orderly ship, and they accomplished a lot. He was so businesslike. So anyway, that's him. But for Kellen's benefit, I want to show a softer side. I'm going to show the folks at home first. Here's Charles Wilkes with his granddaughter. Okay? He looks like a good grandfather there to me.
That means nothing.
Kellen says that means nothing. I tried. Oh, here, let me clump these. I'm sorry. Okay, what kind of ships? How did they get here? They started out with 6 in 1838 from Hampton, Virginia, and made their way across the Atlantic to the Antarctic, to the Pacific Islands, to the Sandwich Islands, and then finally to here. And the 6 ships, most of them got through okay, but they lost a couple and they picked up a couple along the way. So it's kind of interesting to not only keep track of the ships, but also the sailors, because some of the sailors came on fresh from ports like in Rio de Janeiro, for example, or left. And some got shipped back to board their supply ship, the Relief, because they were too out of order. Okay, so that's a collection of their ships right here. And you can see from this that there was a variety of them, all the way from barkentine down to old revenue cutter, flying fish that was is a schooner, but it had all fore and aft rigging, unlike most of the other vessels. So that means that it was especially good for charting. It could sail against the wind better. It could get into tighter places and shallower places and so on. So it was this variety of vessels that they had that contributed a lot to the success of the expedition. Now, the flagship for the thing was the Vincennes, and that's the barkentine that I referred to. It had 3 masts, and it was the biggest of them. That's the one that Wilkes was generally aboard. Now, the one that we up here in our neck of the woods is most interested in is the Porpoise. The Porpoise was the support ship for several launches that they used up this way when they got to Puget Sound. Their exploration up here was getting towards the end of their exploration in Puget Sound. So it's a little confusing to try to kind of fit that in with other descriptions around, because they had more than one ship that they were operating. And anyway, they were here for a while, May through something like August, I think. And they just did an awful lot of exploring. So to even follow Wilkes's account in his 5-volume official record of his voyage is difficult, because they'll mix up. It's not purely, let's see, even if you try to do it purely chronological, because you've got so many ships and stuff involved, it ends up being scattered around. So I had a devil of a time trying to get a good sense of the flow of his voyage when it came to this area. Because ships were coming in from Hawaii after others had gotten here, and some of them didn't even make it, like the Peacock that sank in the Columbia River. But it's all worth it to try to keep up with all this, because it's a fascinating expedition. So there's the Peacock, and I'll pass that group. Let me do that in order. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So the interesting thing is, and one reason why we up here might be interested in the Charles Wilkes expedition is that the week before, they had a big celebration down south for the 4th of July. They were here. So that's one thing that I've put together. There were a couple of vessels involved, and one came early and continued north, and then another one with Lieutenant Maury thoroughly sounded our waters here so it could be carefully charted. They really liked Penn Cove as an anchorage and a safe harbor. This is one of the third thing that Wilkes was charged with by the Admiralty, was to find safe harbors and figure out on the QT what's best for the United States to grab up here. Okay, as far as the English were concerned, they wanted us south of the Columbia River, but slowly but surely Americans worked their way north, and that's what Charles Wilkes did. He started out trying to explore the Columbia, but his vessel, the Vincennes, didn't make it. They pulled out. And then another vessel tried, that's the Peacock, and it sank. And then the Flying Fish was able to successfully do so. Okay, so they came up here, and they had their ships kind of divided up between South Sound and up here. And up here was being explored and chartered just prior to a very important celebration down there in South Sound that Wilkes himself was a part of. And those people down there celebrating the 4th of July, they got to have a day off in addition to Sunday. Now that was on the 5th. The Wilkes celebration was actually on July 5th. And the reason was because the 4th fell on Sunday and they couldn't have their proper ration of grog. Okay? So Wilkes, being the nice person that he was to his crew, gave him an extra holiday, okay, to celebrate. But just those guys down there, when you read the journals of the ones up here, it was all work. They did not have anything going on July 4th or 5th up here. They don't even mention it in their journals that it was the 4th of July celebration or anything. Yeah. So Wilkes is having a good time with his crew down there. He was very kind. And what they did was they offloaded from the Vincennes, and I think there's one other ship involved too, about 100 sailors and Marines made their way in formation, 2 by 2, marching in step with fife and drum, right past the English Nisqually fort that the Hudson's Bay used for trading, and it was built like a fort. Okay, so they went right by it. Let's see. Okay. And, oh, I know what I wanted to pass around. Yeah. Here's what I did to show that event. Okay, there's not pictures of it, particularly. There is one sketch that I found of Fort Nisqually itself, but it wasn't involved in this 4th of July celebration. So I called on AI, okay? And this is my first experience working with AI. I know this is taboo for a lot of people, but anyway, to make illustrations of what they did there for the celebration. Okay. When they walked past the fort, the American troops, of course, were cheering, lots of huzzas, as they called it. And so then the question is, okay, they've got permission to do this. They even bought the ox that they roasted later on from Hudson's Bay Company. They borrowed their cart for transporting the dining goods and maybe even the ox, and so on. So the question is, as they're marching by the fort, what kind of reception did they get? Well, nobody fired a cannon. Nobody lobbed it. They had grenades back then. They didn't do that. They got depending on who in the journal you're reading, they got a couple of cheers back, but a little bit on the silent side. Nevertheless, the English did cooperate on this celebration. It's just mind-blowing.
Well, aren't they Canadians? They're not English.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. So there were some Canadians. There was a mix. And the part that I'm going to point to is the fact that so many of the Hudson's Bay factors were Scottish. Okay? That's what made the difference, I think. And in fact, John McLaughlin of Fort Vancouver, some distance away and over a hard trail, was supposed to be there as part of the 4th of July celebration. It's amazing. Okay, well, McLaughlin didn't make it. He tried to, but he actually arrived a day late, the 6th, instead of the 5th. But at the highest levels, at least around here, from the Hudson's Bay Company, our American settlers and explorers got really pretty amazing help and cooperation. And that's what happened there. Okay, so they marched past the fort. And by the way, at the tail end of this formation were Native Americans. And the surprising thing there is that there were many more Native Americans than there were Americans for this parade. Where did they come from? Well, a lot of the Native Americans had died of disease, particularly in that area right around Nisqually. So chances are somehow word got out to other tribes in the area that this was taking place, and they came. And I'll tell you about one of them in a minute. Okay, so anyway, they all trooped together, Native Americans behind, but as part of the parade, to a carefully chosen place right around American Lake and Sasquatch. There's another lake there. Anybody know? Okay, you know American Lake, yeah. Well, the other one's like a native word, and we can't. A lot of white people, we can't do native words very well. So it's right in between the two lakes, and it had a spring, and that's where they set up the spit to roast the ox, and they proceeded to have a ball game. Somebody mentioned a ball game earlier for 4th of July. Have you begun to notice how many features are involved in this first celebration west of the Rocky Mountains? Had features in it that we have today that we consider important. They pretty much did them all. So they made their own footballs, interestingly enough. This one's for Todd over there, who's the coach. They made their own footballs and had a football game. Then they had a speech that shows up in what I'm passing around. They had a speech that Wilkes gave, and recognizing the occasion. And then they sat down to a 4th of July banquet, included that ox on the spit, and the Native Americans joined in on that too. They may have sat at separate tables, by the way, but they were there, okay? And by the way, why were the Native Americans there? Well, that was a question that the Wilkes expedition lieutenants in their journals asked. Why did they even take part in all this? And what they said was that they were pretty intrigued by the ceremony. They didn't particularly understand what was taking place, but they liked ceremony, they liked singing, and as it was said in the journal, the Native Americans who were kind of like regular Indians, they didn't look like chiefs. They just kind of went around looking kind of bewildered. And the ones that looked like chiefs looked like they just kind of knew everything that was going on, and they just kind of just fit right in with the celebration as if they knew all about the 4th of July. So that's that interesting difference. So next, after the speeches, in speeches, I'll get to that. They had horse racing. And where did the horses come from? Native Americans, by and large. That was true for the Hudson's Bay Company there, too. The natives in that area had a trail connection to the other side of the mountains. And so those natives over there heavily influenced life in South Puget Sound, and having horses was one of those things. So they had a very successful celebration, had all the features that we think of today, including fireworks. I didn't touch on fireworks. Well, they had fireworks, but they were a different sort. They had 2 howitzers that they brought in from the ship. They rolled them along to the banquet grounds and fired them off. Well, in the course of firing off one of them, it exploded prematurely, and it caught the hand of the sailor who was loading it and blew off 2 fingers. And that kind of set the celebration back a little bit. But they recouped and it went on. And so overall, the celebration was good. Yeah. Okay, so let me just check my notes here. Yeah. All right. Well, this was such a good celebration that people in the South Sound communities primarily thought that we need to commemorate this. We need to actually reenact it and call attention to it. So we have going from 1841 to 1906, 65 years difference in time. And you wonder, well, why did they decide to do it then? Well, one of the reasons could have been that they had 2 survivors from the event, the original 1841 in 1906, that could be there and talk about it. So one of them was Chief Slugamus Coquilton, and he was Muckleshoot. Now, I mentioned that the very local natives, like Nisqually, were very few in number. He had come from the Tacoma area to be there. Well, actually, he worked, let me back up. He worked for the Hudson's Bay Company. That's why he was there. Anyway, he was a survivor, and he showed them exactly where the original celebration was in 1841, and that's where they set up in 1906. So here's the chief. And then there was another survivor too. He was not actually present, as nearly as I can tell, at the 1841 celebration, but he was a member of the Charles Wilkes expedition, and he had come to our area on the Peacock, which sank. So he didn't quite make it to the festivities. He spoke. The chief spoke, by the way. He was one of the speakers at the 1906 celebration. There's a really neat book that the people who put on that 1906 put together. It's 100 pages with photographs and maps and transcripts. I mean, a pretty complete story is to be had in this book. And let's see. Yeah. It helped document everything. Oh, I know. The point I wanted to make was that there's a lot of horsepower that went into this book. And that horsepower, by and large, came from South Puget Sound rather than north. All the historical societies and towns and cities, churches, you name it, down there, pretty much participated. About a couple thousand in all for the couple of days that it took place. The railroad was there, brought people in by rails to participate, and so on. So it kind of set the stage. Oh, I want to finish that. Most of the people from down south, but you might wonder, well, was there any participation from here? And the only participant that's listed in here happens to be Major Granville Howler. And that was later on, after 1906, when they were kind of making some toasts, drinking type toasts, down there in South Sound to celebrate. And they had a pretty big celebration in 1909, so not that much later than 1906. He was there to toast the speaker, and he's listed in the book. The other name from up here that's listed in the book is somebody who was involved with the organization of the event, and that was Thomas Hasty II, who lived in Mount Vernon, that area, LaConner, probably LaConner, I think, and so he's formally listed, and so that's some Skagit County. Whatcom County was represented. But we didn't have historians that much here in Island County. They had more of that in these other places, and so we didn't quite show up at that time in these things. So they did have significant celebrations after 1906. The 1909 one, they had others, 1912 and like that. So, oh boy, let's see, I'm missing some. Yeah, some of their significant celebrations were actually in 1850s and 60s. The economy was good around the region, especially down there. There's one community, let me see how I'm doing on time. There's one community, Steilacoom. Oh, okay. Yeah, I better start bringing it to a close. Steilacoom was like Williamsburg back east. Steilacoom was relatively refined, had a good economy, had good commerce, and they had a library association there that was the driver for their celebration, along with the fort at Steilacoom. So those celebrations that took place in the 50s and 60s were some combination of soldiers and forts and just plain citizens and library associations. Kind of an interesting combination. At first it was more the fort that drove the celebrations, and then later it became more the citizens of the town that did. And so that community down there, which lies between Tacoma and Olympia, really stands out in Puget Sound for their celebrations for a number of occasions. Yeah, it's really quite colorful. So Fort Nisqually, the Hudson's Bay Company, was kind of like Jamestown, settled the frontier, had to work things out with the Native Americans, and they were mostly men, and then later they moved to, by and large, to Steilacoom, which was like Virginia's Williamsburg. Kind of interesting. All right. All right, that brings me to conclusion of kind of what was going on around the Sound. I want to wrap it up and kind of put it together to some extent. Today, one of the biggest things you notice in write-ups for 4th of July celebrations is the fireworks. It's going to be the biggest and the best yet, every year, okay? I think maybe you've seen that. And so a lot of our attention really has gone to the festivities part of celebrating the 4th of July. Meanwhile, and you can use fireworks to kind of celebrate, for sure, yes, we're an independent nation now, and we can mark that with a boom. But the thing that we might have fireworks stand for a little bit more is the meaning behind the event, which we're still working on. Yes, we're an independent country now, but no, we're not actually maybe done with working on the building of democracy part. Because if you go back to the Founding Fathers, to me, they made it sound an awful lot like that's a work in progress. The proof of which, whether it works or not, is to be discovered later. You know, we really don't know what this experiment's outcome will be. I'll just suggest we might have some work to do. We might have more celebration, for example, along the lines of the very early ones on Puget Sound, which were very complete in every way, but included a lot more in the way of speeches, reading the Declaration of Independence, and all this kind of thing, which we're actually starting to do now with this 250th celebration by reading the Declaration of Independence in town over at the Holler House. And here before, we've done that. Reenactments, encampments, that sort of thing. Pageantry goes a long way with people. We could do more of that. So, my wife and I, Lindy's sitting back there, we kind of resonate off for a lot of the good documentaries that are made, that are available, that do a good job of telling you like it was, and more of the complete story, not just the surfacey things that everybody agrees is, that's great. There's some downsides too that we need to be working with as well. So the complete story. So I'll just say that examine, renew, celebrate. The 4th of July celebrates a governance journey that is in process, in addition to our clearly achieving independence. That's my view. Anybody have any comments further that they'd like to make? Yes.
I have a question. You mentioned the indigenous people being part of the celebration out of curiosity.
Oh, I'm sorry. Uh-huh.
I wonder if that curiosity is based on the importance of the potlatch in their community.
Oh, yeah.
And when they heard of
Yeah.
community gathering,
Yeah.
see how the white man would do
Yeah.
a potlatch.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of buy-in from the Native Americans for this event, and once again, you wonder why. I'm not a Native American expert by any means, and I invite others like Kellen to weigh in, but I do know that Native Americans in general liked social events. They liked to sing. They sang in their canoes a lot. A feast, and then they potlatched. You're right. Maybe come to think of it, maybe the Native Americans who attended at the end of the celebration there in 1841 kind of looked around and said, "Okay, what else do they do? Where's all the goodies?" I mean, that's really a possibility. Yeah. Can we burn down your ships and get the iron nails out of them? Good question. Yeah, it's so interesting to try to see things from the Native American point of view, and that's why our history here is so interesting. We're such a crossroads of cultures. Native Americans first, Spanish, Russians, English, and Americans. I mean, big time. All those, and the way I look at it, the Native Americans were kind of the petri dish here. They were here first. They were the uncultured petri dish, and then all of these other influences came into play, and that's just a fascinating thing for me. All right, anybody else? Yeah. And I'm going to go close to you because I can't hear.
Do you happen to know what the festivities are going to be here in Coopville and at what times?
Okay. Well,
3 o'clock for the meeting of the
okay, 3 o'clock.
at the Holler House.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Repeat that though.
Okay, 3 o'clock today at the Holler. No,
On the 4th of July.
4th of July. Okay, 4th of July.
So Saturday.
is, yeah, would you describe it a little bit?
They're
Huh?
going to read the Declaration of Independence from the front
Okay.
porch at the Haller House.
Okay, Declaration of Independence. Is there anything else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
We'll do that in there.
Yeah. So, you know, our celebration here does get back to the roots of the thing rather well. But the way we're doing it is it's scattered. You know, we've already had Paul Revere, we've had encampment. We've had, I think, what the Declaration of Independence read once before here. What did Patrick read?
Oh, last year.
Yeah. So twice, it'll be twice for the Declaration. All of this stuff, I hate to say it,
Oak Harbor's having a parade at 11 on Saturday.
yeah, so that's, you're going to, some dress patriotically with colors and so on. But anyway, I wanted to make a point after that about how we've celebrated here. It's been rather piecemeal. And one of the things that happens is maybe because we didn't pile it all together at once, our local papers have not picked it up. They've picked up the fireworks, the marches, and all of these kinds of things. But the fact is, we're starting to do the celebration more completely here this year. And it would be nice if it could be recognized by something other than AI. I went on AI and I asked, how do they do celebrations around here? And AI came back with these piecemeal things that we've actually been doing lately and made it sound like we've always been doing them. But the truth is I don't know how well we've really done that in the past. I don't know. I think it's mostly parades and feasting and fireworks and so on. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that pretty well brings us to our conclusion. Thank you. Thank you very much.